Help us, Quinshon Judkins. You're our only hope. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. If you think Quinshon Judkins won't be playing in week 2, just peep the Browns' yards per carry average on Sunday. Because their roles, Kevin Stefanski and Joe Flacco, will obviously fall on the sword for yesterday's loss, but they actually both had pretty good Sundays overall. Plus, Sunday's loss means an 0-6 start is very much in play for Cleveland. But I think we saw yesterday this Browns team is going to be way more competitive than they were a year ago. First, though, I do want to thank you for being in every day at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And I waited specifically till after Kevin Stefanski spoke on Monday in his post-mortem press conference, I always like to call it, even though that's very morbid in general, to do this episode because I wanted to hear what he had to say about Quinshon Judkins. Now, Kevin very rarely gives us anything anyway, so I didn't expect him to just like declare him the starter or anything like that. But I thought it was worth seeing what he had to say about it because we know Quinshon Judkins signed his contract on Saturday, is in the building, ready to go. Well, ready to go to a degree, at least practicing. The Browns have been given an exemption, a roster exemption that allows them to keep Quinshon active on the roster with him only able to practice for the next 2 weeks and until the exemption is essentially lifted. And I'm assuming that can be triggered by the Browns because, again, the way everyone's talked about this, even Kevin Stefanski in his press conference on Monday talked about this. It sounds like it's kind of up to them. Like, if they think he's ready, he'll play. If they don't, he won't. And the exemption will be lifted and they'll have to make a roster move to make him part of the team. Now, so Stefanski's answer on this was very Kevin Stefanski-esque in terms of whether or not he'll be out there on Sunday and what type of role he could potentially have. What he said specifically, and I wanted to read it verbatim here because I have it not too far away from me, is that basically Quinshon's role, we'll see. Got to get through this week, but I don't know. So they're taking a very wait-and-see approach. They're not forcing the issue. They're not guaranteeing anything. And I can understand why that's the case. You're talking about a player who missed all of training camp, all of the preseason. And yes, he obviously has been working out, staying in shape, all those things. I'm assuming he's been sort of studying the playbook on his own and doing the preparation necessary to make sure that he can be as up to speed as you can be on your own. But there's valuable things that he missed during training camp in the preseason, like reps with his teammates and building chemistry and just understanding the nuances of like how certain guys block and how he likes to run in this offense and sort of where the holes are going to be and sort of seeing those things. So he's going to be trying to squeeze 4 weeks of work into one. And I said initially that I thought it would be maybe not a long shot, but I thought it would be optimistic to think that he was going to have an advanced role in this offense come Sunday. And I still think an advanced role might be maybe excessive. Like, I don't know that he's just going to be the lead back come Sunday, taking handoffs out of the backfield. But I think they are going to try to get him out there and work him into the offense in some capacity as soon as possible. And the biggest reason I feel that way, just look at the rushing stats from Sunday's game against the Bengals. The trio of Dylan Sampson, Jerome Ford, and Raheem Sanders all combined for a whopping 1.9 yards per carry average on the ground as running backs. When you throw in Harold Fannon's 1 rush attempt and Flacco's 2 rush attempts, that number goes to 2 yards per carry. Ooh, such a big difference. So not great rushing numbers. It was a problem yesterday. We asked numerous offensive linemen. I mean, Ethan Posick talked about it on Monday. Bill Batonio talked about it after the game. the idea that they just didn't execute. They just didn't. They missed some assignments at times. There were some linebackers who were sort of still free to run and make those plays. And in the NFL, that's going to happen because they're NFL talent, NFL caliber linebackers. And so that's what kind of played out on Sunday. And they have to be better. But I don't know if that fixes all the issues. I really thought leading into this game that the run game could be good enough to, hold down the fort for a little bit while Quinshon Judkins' situation was still sort of dealt with. And once he signed, I sort of still felt, okay, they can ease him back into this. They'll be okay for a couple weeks here. And especially against the Bengals defense that I was highly critical of leading up to that game on Sunday, highlighting the fact that in the preseason they were getting gashed for 10 yards per carry against even teams' backups, even teams' twos, and what that all sort of meant for the regular season. And it clearly didn't mean as much because the Browns' run game, despite the fact that I think this offensive line is a strong offensive line and getting back to what they do best in Kevin Stefanski's offense and being coached the way that gets the most out of them from Mike Bloomgren. I thought those things would matter and show themselves on Sunday, and they didn't. The run game was a complete disaster. Jerome Ford, I think we saw Jerome Ford's had some really nice moments here. I mean, one of the biggest one that stands out to me is his touchdown against the Jets 2 years ago from Flacco on sort of the broken play where he throws it to him and he's able to go score a touchdown. And the euphoric night that was as they clinched a playoff berth and sent Huntington Bank Field into such a fanfare that night. I mean, it was awesome. That was such a cool night, such a cool moment in Browns history. And Ford had a really cool handprint on it. And he's had some other moments along the way, some other plays that made you think there was something there. But I think you saw against the Bengals this week, like why he had to take a pay cut to stick around. And frankly, why the Browns invested 2 draft picks in changing the deck of this running back room and trying to get some new pieces in here and rebuild this thing in a different way with young talent that they can, look towards for the future. So I think the world of Jerome Ford. He's a great guy. He's awesome when he talks with us in the media. He works his ass off. I don't deny all those things, but he has his role in the NFL is more of like a third down style guy who is getting a handful of snaps a game, which is what he got on Sunday. And even those handful of snaps weren't great for him in this one specifically. But he can't be like a lead back. And so they need to get Quinshon out there as soon as possible. I think there's going to be an urgency to get him out there as soon as possible. And once he is out there, I think this run game, whether week 1 was just kind of a getting acclimated, shaking off the rust sort of period for that phase of the Browns offense, or whether it's going to sort of stick around here. And it might stick around just because of the nature of the schedule you play. I mean, the Ravens are going to be, although their defense didn't look great against the Bills, they're going to be a tough defense, I think, in general, because they're super, super talented. They're too talented not to be. And I think you're going to have some struggles there, but they need that guy. Because here's the thing. When Nick Chubb was at the peak of his powers here in Cleveland, I'm willing to sort of meet in the middle and say some of his greatness was, yes, the offensive line in front of him was really strong. And I do think this is a strong offensive line core in general, especially several years ago when Nick Chubb was still here, when they were still players in their primes. But I think Chubb was a guy that masked sometimes when there was problems, like a missed block or whatever. He could make a guy miss and still break into the secondary and rip off these big runs because he was that talented of a player. I mean, it was the reincarnation of Jim Brown, it felt like, for so many times in so many moments with Nick Chubb. And so I think there was a little bit of that going on too, where he helped mask some of the things that didn't go right with the offensive line. I think Quinshon can be, I'm not going to say Nick Chubb. That's a very, very lofty expectation to put on a guy. But I do think he's talented enough that he can too erase some of those issues. And that's the thing that's missing in that backfield. The guys in there right now are guys that really, they can only take what's given to them. Sampson, I think, is great in the passing game. We saw that on Sunday, and that was supposed to be his role from the beginning, with Judkins being the first and second down guy and him being more the third down guy who catches passes out of the backfield. I have no doubts he's going to thrive in that role, and he'll be the great third down guy they need. But Quinshon is the back that I think is the most talented on this team, without question. One of the most talented picks they made in this draft, and the guy that sort of can erase some of those mistakes and can make the big plays happen all on his own by himself. And that's what I think the Browns are missing right now. And that's what the Browns are getting back, hopefully, with him now in the fold with this team. The situation's still interesting because he still might face a suspension. He's meeting with league officials this week to talk about the incident in South Florida. So I don't know what all that's going to bear, but if I feel inclined to believe that the Browns are going to try to get him out there Sunday in some capacity because they realize how bad and desperate their run game is without him based on how week one went. I'm not saying he's going to get the lion's share of the carries in this first outing because he's still going to be kind of getting acclimated and really getting integrated into the offense fully. But I think he's going to get out there and they're going to start to use him in some capacity because they know they need him and his talent and his skill set as part of this backfield. Because that run game on Sunday against the Bengals was an absolute disaster. It was ugly. With that said, coaches and quarterbacks will always take the brunt of the blame in a loss, but I actually thought Stefanski and Flacco were not nearly part of the problem in any way, shape, or form in Sunday's loss. We'll talk about it some more coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but Prize Picks makes it so that being right means you're cashing out. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and honestly, one of my favorite ways to follow along with football. I love checking projections like Josh Allen, more or less 270 yards passing, or Saquon Barkley, more or less 1 rushing touchdown. And this year, they're offering max discounts, which give you an easy opportunity to cash out. For example, next week, they have a max discount for Lamar Jackson, 0.5 passing yards. Easy. Just take the over and win some of the easiest money in your life you've ever made in your life. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use the limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already need. At first, I thought it was too good to be true. I promise you it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon or other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25% per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. So I understand that in this football world that we live in, coaches and quarterbacks are always going to be the two most notable figures on a football team that fall on the sword. They will get the brunt of the blame when a team loses. They will take, and then a lot of times they'll take that on and understand like the roles that they play in this thing. That's just what happens when you're in leadership positions. And the quarterback is viewed as a leader because they run the offense and they touch the ball more than any other player on the football field. And the coach is the coach. So of course, that's kind of how these things go. It's part of the nature of the beast. I think both those figures for the Browns understand that that's the case. But I have heard, and I would say this is a vocal minority of people. I've heard throughout the day Monday, some people who want to blame all this on Stefanski. And listen, at the end of the day, the coach is the coach. The coach plays a role in the power structure of an organization. And so some of the decisions that get made, cutting guys, not keeping Dustin Hopkins, for example, opting for Andre Schmidt, who misses the field goal, like personnel decisions like that. They always talk about being thought partners in this organization with the Browns. And so I'm sure Andrew Berry and Kevin consulted Kevin Stefanski on like who should make the team as at the kicker spot. Those conversations are going on all the time. And so I'm not saying he's made every perfect decision when it comes to filling out his roster and even at times maybe not developing guys. But I do think that if you can look past which is a hard thing to do, I get it, because it's what cost him the game was the 4 points left off the board by Andre Schmidt as the kicker. But if you can look past that and see what was happening yesterday on the football field, where you had a competitive football team that didn't quit and was playing hard every single snap, every single, every second of that game, trying to win. And you see the game plan that was put out there by Stefanski as well. I think you see a coach that understands what he was doing. And I also think too, like, Stefanski deserves credit because he had these young guys heavily involved in things. He talked after the game about how they don't consider their rookies at this point because they've been with the team for several months now. And they know they're so important that, like, they're not going to sit there and be like, well, you're only a rookie. No, they're like, listen, you're a contributor for our team. We need you. We need you to make plays. And those guys stepped up. Like, yesterday was the perfect, other than the end result, like, it was a perfect outcome in terms of, like, how the game was going, how things were playing out. The Browns were largely in control at times in that game. And they had their opportunities to win, obviously. Stefanski put them in position to do that, but also you saw guys right before our eyes, young guys, rookies, making an impact and developing right in front of us that are going to be important to the future of this team. Like, those are all the boxes you need Kevin Stefanski to sort of check, aside from the biggest one of all, which is, do you have a franchise quarterback to move forward with? Because we know the answer is not Joe Flacco, which we'll get to Flacco here in a second. But listen, I thought Stefanski had a great game plan. I thought, for as much as I always complain about, sometimes I feel like Kevin Stefanski loses a feel for how things are playing out in a game. And what I mean by that is, we know the Browns are an analytics-based team, right? They love to use the stat sheets and the advanced metrics to sort of figure out, like, how to build their roster, when to go for it in certain situations, all those different things. I feel like it's a team. I feel like sometimes he gets lost in those numbers and he loses a feel for what's actually playing out on the field and, like, what he should do, because it's the best decision for the team at times. But I'll tell you this, in this game specifically, I felt like he had a feel for how things were going. It was a very methodical. There was a lot of long drives in this game. The first two drives went 7:28 and then 9:50 for the Bengals and then the Browns back to back. Like, I thought his play calling was great. He was putting guys in position to be successful. They were marching up and down the field. Again, with his game plan, put the Browns in position to win this game. I thought he was decisive in key moments. They went for it on fourth down a number of times, and they would have converted a handful of them if it weren't for some untimely drops. Jerry Jeudy obviously had the one there. I was impressed by the way that Kevin Stefanski essentially handled things with his team in this game. The way he called the game, he put his team in position to win. And that's the biggest thing that you can ask for always from your head coach, especially an offensive-minded head coach, is that they give you a chance to win and they put you in position to be successful, and they're calling the right things and pulling the right strings. And I thought that was the case. The blunders that happened, like the interceptions, those weren't on him. Like, they were passes that should have been completed because they were good play designs against the Bengals defense, and guys couldn't hang on to the ball. At some point, it's up to the players on the field to execute, and that obviously didn't happen yesterday, most notably with Andre Schmidt, but also with some of the guys that had other miscues in this one. And so I think Stefanski, yes, he's going to get blamed because he's the coach, but I think he was really strong, and you saw why he's thought of so highly around this league and within this organization as well in that game yesterday. That was back to being like a classic Kevin Stefanski game. And if they had won, I think people would be praising him today. I also think for Flacco, I heard some complaints about Flacco's play, and I don't know where that comes from really at all, because I thought Flacco was awesome. I guess here's what it was. I heard some people saying that if Deshaun Watson gave you that performance, that people would be ripping him a new one. And on some level, I understand where that's coming from, because Deshaun Watson's such a sensitive thing, such a sensitive topic, that might be the case. But here's the thing. Deshaun Watson hasn't ever really put up a performance like that in his time in Cleveland. Like 290 yards? No. Has never done that. Like nearly 300-yard games, that wasn't something on Deshaun Watson's resume here in Cleveland since he's been here. The 2 interceptions, I get where it goes. This is a case where we need a new way to define interceptions because, yes, it goes to the quarterback. It's credited to the quarterback as a blemish on their stats. But in the grand scheme of things, neither of those interceptions were obviously Joe Flacco's fault. Balls could have been placed a little bit better. There was, I think the Jerry one in particular was like pressure bearing down on him, and he threw it a little bit further out there where Jerry had to really dive for it. But still, those receivers would argue every single time and twice on Sunday that they need to haul those in because they hit their hands. And so I don't know where anybody can walk away from this one, even though they're in the 2 most important positions of power that are always going to have to, or are always going to be looked at to fall on the sword. I don't think there's a lot of blame to go around for Joe Flacco and Kevin Stefanski in this game. I thought what they did on Sunday was what you could hope for from a standpoint of like coach who clearly knows how to call a good football game, had the feel for that football game, put his team in position to be successful and frankly to win with even limited resources that the team has. He was going to pull it off. And then with Flacco, it's like he's a 40-year-old quarterback who still has some zip in his arm. And I thought he was captaining some really good drives. He was in command of the offense. Like it was a strong performance for both those guys that get spoiled because they can't make their kicks. That's the way I feel about it. So with that loss, it was the one game in the 6-game stretch I thought was the most winnable. So 0-6 is very much in play now. But if they aren't going to get there, who could they beat along the way in the next 5 games? We'll talk about that coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans or your friends cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can always be such a hassle between keys, login screens, the prices jumping at checkout. It's just so frustrating. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time became my go-to app for buying tickets. I kid you not. Just last year, I was buying tickets for my wife and I to go see Ohio State, Michigan. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best prices. Plus, all the fees are included. So the price you see when you click on the tickets you want is the price that you pay at the end. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple tabs, I saw amazing deals. You can too. I'm talking about tickets to your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go Game Time today. All right, so I know I was the one saying that I thought the Browns were going to win that game. On one platform, I even guaranteed to win. I talked about on this podcast why the 3 reasons why they will win. I was feeling confident, and frankly, there's another version of Spencer German in an alternate universe somewhere who is going full Pete Weber, if everyone gets the reference there, on social media because he guaranteed a win and it came to fruition because Andre Schmidt made that kick. But congratulations to that Spencer German somewhere. This Spencer German was very much wrong, and I should have expected that the Browns are going to Browns this thing. But what's unfortunate about this one now is that of this 6-game stretch that we harped on so much in the offseason, that was the game that felt like it was going to be the most winnable for this team. It was a Bengals team that the Browns had success against in the previously. That just felt like they could certainly hang with, and they always get off to slow starts. The Bengals do, so you could see it being close the way that it was and maybe sneak out with a win. Myles Garrett wreaking havoc, the defensive line being good. All those things kind of came to fruition. It just came down to missing a couple kicks that cost you the game in the end. And so I feel vindicated on some level that it was close. But now that they lose, you're staring in the face of a schedule that does not bode well for you. And as we think about like when does the quarterback change get made and how do things kind of play out from here? Like there is a very realistic possibility that they could be 0-6. I mean, I watched that Ravens-Bills game last night. It looked like those two teams were playing a different sport, and the Ravens put up 40 points and lost. I mean, I don't need to waste time getting into what I think the Ravens should or shouldn't have done in certain situations there, But yeah, like they lost putting up 40 points. It's going to take a lot more than 16 points to beat the Ravens. That's going to be a tough task. Plus, they're going to be highly motivated after that loss. They're going to be mad. Derrick Henry's going to be running angry. He might get Kyle Brandt's angry runs next week because he's going to be so upset and trying to get revenge for his miscue in that game. So that's a tall task because the Ravens are a Super Bowl contender. Then you get the Packers, who started the season obviously 1-0 in their own right by dismantling the Lions, who were the best team in the NFC last year. And they have Micah Parsons. Like they're a Super Bowl contending team. Then you get the Lions on the road, who I just said were the best team in the NFC last year. And I think are still like they lost week 1, but teams lose in week 1. I think they're going to find a way out of this thing and still be an electric team and a team that's going to contend for the playoffs. So it's going to be tough, and it's on the road. And then you go to London to play the Vikings, who are already going to be overseas because they play a game in Ireland the week before against the Steelers. And so those sort of be more acclimated than you. And that Vikings team was really good last year. Now I have my doubts about JJ McCarthy, but I don't know that that's going to be like an easy win. And then you get the Steelers in Pittsburgh, which is just a house of horrors. And coming back from London, I refuse to believe that the Browns are going to win that game. Like I've already basically written that one in pen that it's going to be a loss. And so you got 4 games in the middle there where I'm trying to figure out if the Browns can win one or multiple. I don't know if multiple is in the cards just offhand for me, especially when you're only going to score 16 points, if that's how the offense is going to operate and you're not going to be able to trust your kicker. But if there is a team that I'm looking at, it is the Vikings. The only thing that scares me is that they'll be overseas already and sort of have their bodies acclimated, have been over there sort of getting adjusted already when you go play them. But that's the one team that I think I have the most questions about. Maybe the Lions are the team that regresses in that division, though, because I did say that I think one team regresses. Maybe it's the Lions, and maybe JJ McCarthy's great, and the Vikings stay playing great football, and they're still going to be one of the best teams in that division in the NFC again. We'll find out. But I'm kind of banking on the Vikings. We haven't seen them play yet as of recording this. They'll play Monday Night Football against the Bears, so we'll see how that goes. But I kind of have that one circled as the one where maybe you get a win. But 0-6 is certainly a real possibility here. What I will say, though, and what I think fans can take some solace in here, and I mentioned before the game yesterday that there was an apathy. Apathy was at an all-time high throughout the season last year, especially at the end. And I felt like there was a wait-and-see approach from a lot of fans leading into 2025, understanding they're trying to thread that needle between being competitive and rebuilding. You didn't have the franchise quarterback. I think they showed you enough yesterday to make you want to follow and watch this team, though. Like the young guys, the youth movement was on full display, and that's always something to get excited about in terms of the future. Young guys who are going to contribute and be key pieces for your team. If those guys keep doing that, that's going to be worth monitoring the rest of the season. And then you mix in the fact that they fought till the end. Like they were in that game until the very end. The offense was more competent, as I said it would be, than it was last year. Like they're not always they're going to score more than 16 points. It's not always going to be like that. Without question, I'm sure they're going to, it's not going to be as bad as last year where that was like kind of the average for a while that they were scoring. I think they'll snap out of it to a degree. But man, like the fact that they fought in that game and that you see a team that is going out there and giving it their all, like this is not a gap year for any of these players. They're trying to fight and win, and they're trying to prove that they are forced to be reckoned with, and that all the people that are projecting they're going to be the worst team in football and finish with the number 1 overall pick and all these things are wrong. And I think those are all reasons. Those are all things that you saw on display on Sunday. And those are all reasons to keep watching this team and be into the Browns in 2025 in general. Because I think they're going to compete. I think they're going to fight. And you're going to see competitive football at the very least. I can't guarantee any wins. I'm done making guarantees for the season. But I think like the fact that you saw a team willing to compete till the very end and there was no quit in that group is an encouraging thing for the season ahead. And I think you will get that pretty much every single week. Maybe if we get to the end of the year and things have gone sideways, it's a different story. But I think in that case, then you're talking about guys losing their jobs, and then you're talking about, restarting all over with a reset with new coaches and GMs and all those different things if the guys quit. But in general, I think you saw a competitive team more so than you did a year ago. I mean, they looked lifeless from week 1 last year against the Cowboys, and that wasn't the case this year, week 1 against the Bengals. So that's the best news of all. So if you were looking for reasons to follow the team and be excited, I think they gave you some of those yesterday, and it's just unfortunate that it was all overshadowed in a heartbreaking loss, another heartbreaking loss for a team that always seems to find ways to, just stab you in the gut, like crush your soul. And they find the most unique ways to do it. When you think you've seen it all, they come up with something else. But it's there was good stuff in that game that should garner fans' attention for the 16 games that remain, starting obviously next week in Baltimore with another division matchup, and a big division matchup at that. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Reminder, bonus episode. This is a bonus episode, but on Mondays. But also, we're going to be talking to Lance Reisland for our Tuesday episode. He's going to break down some of the key plays on offense, defense, and then how the game plan needs to shift week to week going into that Baltimore game in week 2. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with him and sharing that with you. So make sure, like I said, you hit that subscribe button. And for your second listen, you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.